Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning. Welcome to the big radio program. It is the Thursday edition of the big radio show, and we hope that you are ready to go for today because I certainly am not. I am certainly not ready to go for today. It's I don't know if it's the cold medicine or what, but definitely not ready to go. But we got a lot to cover. Coming up here in the first hour of today's show, we've got some thoughts on the upcoming session and some of the things that we're going to be facing, some of the priorities, the budget priorities that we are expected to be taking on, and some of the battles that I think are going to be waged in the halls of power down in Juneau for this coming session. So we hope that you stick around for that in hour one. In hour two, we're going to be joined by State Representative Will Stapp, who is coming on board with us to talk about his recent debate with Representative Chuck Kopp about the defined benefits plan that is being proposed by the Senate majority, the bipartisan Senate majority, and being pushed by many in the majority in the House. They see an opportunity to strike while the iron's hot, and they keep telling us that this is going to save us money, and although we haven't quite figured out how that's going to work yet. Will had some real zingers. I don't know if you've seen any of this debate, but I caught part of it, some of the highlights reels, and I got to tell you, it's a pretty interesting discussion, and I can't wait to see what Will has to say on this topic, and that's going to be coming up in hour two today. So good morning and welcome back to the program. Tomorrow is Firearms Friday, and we're going to be talking with Reason Magazine's Jacob Sullum, who is going to come on board with us, and he's actually going to be talking with us about his latest book, which is entitled Beyond Control, and that is his book about gun control, and I think some of the futility of actually trying to rein some of that in, and his positions on it as well. But we'll be talking with Jacob Sellum tomorrow from Reason Magazine. Plus, of course, Willie Waffle will be joining us for our weekend movie review, and that should be a fantastic time, all coming up on the show tomorrow. Okay, let's dive into some of the headlines. Of course, the big news for those who have been following what's been happening out on the western coast, with the storm, with the typhoon, how long, and of course the destruction of a couple of the bigger villages out there on the Bering Sea. It's just been a tragic situation, as we've traced the path of how long and what it did to those communities out there in Western Alaska. Of course, we saw the devastation with the houses that were displaced, some of them floating, not just out upriver, but all the way out to sea. And of course, many of the folks who've been displaced now, there's been an airlift which started yesterday, and that has become one of the largest emergency evacuations in state history. Up to 1,000 people now have been airlifted out to both Bethel and to Anchorage, to shelters, because the village has essentially become uninhabitable. There's no power, no lights, food, water, medical care. Those things have all become in short supply. The Alaska Airlines Center at the University of Alaska campus in Anchorage, they have set up for about 300 of those evacuees with food and cots and medical care. And the entire village in those areas basically are going to be uninhabitable for the foreseeable future. The governor said that he has been in contact with President Trump, and that the president had personally assured him that there would be federal assistance heading out that way to try and help offset some of those things. The rebuilding efforts, which, of course, that are going to take time, but we are weeks away from winter here on the western side of Alaska. And of course, you can't move materials and barges and everything else. It's going to be a hot mess out there. And they've got freeze up, of course, is coming, and that storm struck right before the change of seasons, and so much of this is not even going to be able to be addressed until spring. So this is a tough situation. I had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who was in Chivak, which is out there on the western coast by Hooper Bay. And he said that Chivak had been moved in the 50s, I think he said, from the lowlands up onto a bluff. And he said, but still you could see the winds. That village had damage with some of the roofs being torn off and everything else, but they had, again, avoided the flooding because they were up on a bluff. And I think that's probably where you're going to see some of these things are going to have to change, where they're going to have to try and move some of these places and villages into the higher ground area, so this doesn't happen again and again and again. We've seen that Typhoon Merbok back in 2022, which hit the coastline, stretching for almost 800 miles. It was this is going to be a problem moving forward. Halong's impact was much more concentrated. It only hit about in most concentrated aspects, only hit about 100-mile stretch of the coast at any one time, where Murbach was spread out over the entire coast, kind of diffusing it, so to speak. This is like a punch, rather than a slap. So anyway, they're moving a lot of those folks into both Bethel and into Anchorage, and it looks like it will be for the winter, using Alaska National Guard C-17 Globemasters and other aircraft. They transferred hundreds of people into town and into a warmer community where they could be taken care of. And so I'm glad to hear that we're at least moving in that direction. But this is definitely got to be a tough winter for the folks from a lot of those villages, especially Kipsuk and Quinnipiac. So it's just keep them in your thoughts and prayers, folks. That's all I could say. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers, because this is going to be a rough winter for a lot of those folks out there. But a helping hand is there, and hopefully we can have some kind of plan by the time the springtime rolls around for these folks to be able to make it back into their homes. All right. What else do we have here that I have been wanting to dive into? There's a couple stories that I've been kind of holding on to for a couple days, as we've talked about some of the other things that are going on out there. John Faulkner over at the Must Read Alaska has got a good article talking about the grand jury. And we've had, of course, discussions on this program with David Haig and with Ben Carpenter and others about the role of the grand jury and how that has been basically suborned by the courts, and specifically the Alaska Supreme Court, who issued Supreme Court Order 1993, which completely changed the way that they impaneled grand jury participants, grand jury jurors. And that's a great article. We'll try and get into that here before the end of the show. But if you hadn't had a chance to go out and take a look at it, it's part one of a series, apparently. That's how they have it labeled. And part one is the only one that's up right now. Again, the grand jury, constitutionally based power retained by the people, by John Faulkner and Bob Bird. And if you haven't had a chance to go over there and read it, it really steps out and goes through piece by piece where the power for the grand jury comes from, what job and duty they're supposed to perform, and the changes that have been wrought by this Supreme Court order. And what does it mean for Alaskans, and what can we do? What can we do? What can the governor do? Because the piece ends with a plea to the governor to actually step up and do something. So we'll be talking about that here either today or maybe next week as we go through and continue discussions on that. We've got some stories coming out of Anchorage as well, which just make me scratch my head. The biggest question these days is, why would anyone want to? I mean, I don't know. I just that sounds I guess arrogant. I don't know. I was looking for the word here, but the fact that Anchorage has become so violent and lawless and really kind of not a nice place to live. The one of the headlines deals with a shooting that took place about 100 yards from where my office was in Anchorage for 5 years, at a place that I visited many times. And there was a shooting in Midtown Anchorage there, where a man was fatally shot. We've got there was another shooting and a drive and a what looked like a stalking gone bad last week. There was more. It's just there's been 22 murders in Anchorage this year alone so far. We're not even through the year. 22. And that just seems extraordinarily high to me. I mean, it's like 2 a month, right? It's like 2 a month for a city of 300,000. That just seems like that is a little excessive to me. And that's just one of the problems that they're having in Anchorage. So we could talk about that as well. Plus the latest, Michael Tavolario has got a piece that's up in the Watchman talking about 4 essentials that Alaska needs to deal with if we're going to pull the ship off the rocks. And kind of like the Charter of Changes, only dealing directly with specific policy issues. And so we'll get into that as well. All right. We're going to continue. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Let's see. Where were we? I've got to do that and jump over there. Okay. Hi, how are you, my friends? Welcome to the program. And thanks for coming out. What do we got here? Let me start off at the top with the comments from this morning. A lot of good mornings. Hello to everybody and good morning. Thanks for coming on board. Appreciate it. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Cool Ray on YouTube says, go back to bed if you're sick. Oh, I wish I could. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Sixers. And Rick's not even sure it's going to be a good morning. He says it's early, but I'll say it good morning, but not sure if it will be. Wow, where's the positivity here, Rick? This is going to be great. Great. Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Blah, 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 blah. Kim says prayers and assistance. Let's not make this political. No, I mean, I we need to get these folks. These folks need to be helped and taken care of. But I think in the long run, we're going to have to talk about some of the solutions so that this doesn't happen again in the future. It's because it's like I was talking about the hurricane areas on the East Coast where the federal government keeps coming in and bailing out these hurricane areas over and over and over again. And you're like, hey, you know what would solve that? Not building in hurricane areas. I mean, if you let the market work in those areas, people would stop building in those areas if they quit getting money to rebuild. That would be, part of the deal. But it's most important to get these folks moved to a place to where they're safe for the winter. Willie in the chat room, Willie out at Quinnipiac says as many as 2,000 people will be moved to Anchorage. Oof. Wow. Kind of crazy. Thank you. Brian asked the question, was the shooter known to the police? At this point, no, we have no other information on that. I'll get to that when we start talking about Anchorage, Brian. But I mean, this is like a continual parade of pain coming out of Anchorage. I don't know what's going on down there. Let's see. Pleasantly breezy in the hook, the Wasilla fish hook. He said he had to chase down the grill cover last night, but a peaceful morning all in all. Yeah, it was, I got to tell you, it was blowing hard last night here with rain slapping the side of the house. It was a little breezy around here for sure. We'll see what's going on. Snow stays by Halloween. This is Rick. Average, given Alaska, given average, snow stays by Halloween. Yeah, I mean, well, in Fairbanks, I'm surprised that they don't have. I'm surprised they don't have more snow. For sure. Okay, so look at that. I'm all through the comments. Oh, I missed Terry's. Terry says Anchorage is turning into Chicago. You kind of feel that way, right? You kind of feel that way right now. Is that is definitely not a. It's not a place where I'd want to raise my family, or have my family raise their family, which is, I mean, it's a shame. Definitely a shame there. All right. Okay. We are up and ready to go. How are you guys? How's your week going? I mean, it's Thursday. How did we get to Thursday already? It's crazy. Rick said up in the valley that they have had so much rain that if it was the other stuff, the white stuff, it would be a mess. That's the truth, isn't it? And then Frank says no snow in Fairbanks and only 16 days till trapping season. He is jonesing hard. You can tell he wants to get out there on the trail. But yeah, I feel you. All right, well, let's get back to it, shall we? About ready to jump back in the Michael Duke Show.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, let's continue on here this morning as we go through talking about some of the things that we're going to talk about. We were just talking about Anchorage, and what it looks like, what it looks like down there. It, and again, I don't mean to beat up on the place too much, but what the heck is going on? A man was shot and killed at a Midtown gas station on Wednesday. This was right at the corner of C Street and 36th there. And it's the convenience store right there where I used to stop by a couple times a week and pick up a drink or a hot dog or something on my way into work. Just a average and actually one of the nicer convenience stores in town, quite honestly. Officers were called to the scene of the shooting right before 10:30 a.m. and they found a man with a gunshot wound to his upper body. The man was declared dead at the scene. He's not been identified. They haven't identified the shooter. They haven't really given any further details. But again, the story finished off with the comment that there's been 22 homicides in Anchorage so far this year. I mean, we're just halfway into November or into October, and there's been 20, it's like 2 a month right now, every month as we go on our way through. And, when I got to Anchorage, when I got to Wasilla, but was working in Anchorage starting, I guess, 12 years ago now. I guess it would be just about 11 years ago this month. 11 years ago this month. That this wasn't what was happening, right? It wasn't like this. I don't know what's going on. And then there was one of my former clients down there who is just a few blocks further north in the Midtown area, had their building vandalized just out of the blue on Monday night. There's actually video, and they weren't the only ones. This has apparently been happening in that whole area out there. Guys just picking up rocks off the sidewalk, off the median there, or out of some of the gravel beds, and starts slinging rocks at these big picture windows in the fronts of these businesses. Doesn't try to get in, doesn't try and do anything else, just picks up the rocks and slings them at the windows until they get busted out. Why? I don't know. We didn't. It's just, like some people just want to see the world burn, I guess. And this has been going on in downtown Anchorage for the last couple of years. And you got to start asking yourself the question, what is not happening? What has changed in the last 10 years? What has changed in the last 10 years in the downtown area that is, allowing this or causing some of this? Now, I don't have any real, it's all causality, right? It's all, I'm making assumptions here. But one of the major things that we've seen is this shift in policy, both at the local level and at the state level with SB 91, and we saw that rampant lawlessness really start to take hold. Anchorage was the worst hit on the whole SB 91 situation. But then we saw assemblies that were becoming more and more soft on crime, kind of a defund the police, spend millions of dollars on homelessness. I mean, watching this video of the man smash the windows in Midtown, I mean, he kind of looks like a homeless guy, right? Just kind of, he's got all his belongings on his back and he's walking around and he just arbitrarily reels up and picks up some rocks and starts flinging. I mean, is this part and parcel of that problem? I don't know. But I know that in the 10 years that I was there working in Anchorage, I never wanted to live there, thank goodness. But something has fundamentally changed. And at some point, we have to have some self-reflection. And this is part of the problem that we have across the state, not just in our communities, but I mean, in our state government as well. And that is that we really, really need to start doing some self-reflection. Like, what is, why are these things happening? And that's when I started thinking about this, when I started looking at it, because again, it was 2 weeks ago, there was another shooting in Anchorage, where it was just it looked like it may have been something random. Then it turned out to be some kind of stalking case. And then before that, there was some random shootings and other violent crime. There's been a huge homelessness problem in the Midtown area for sure. We had problems where I was working down there as well. There was a big homeless encampment behind the business park where we had the radio stations there. And, you just got to start asking yourself the question, how did we get here? Because if we don't analyze what the steps were to get, how are you ever going to reverse them? And again, going back to this, all I can see is that we have some real issues with the leadership in the city of Anchorage. When I first got there, it was Dan Sullivan was the mayor. No, not that Dan Sullivan, the other Dan Sullivan, was the mayor. And, he was fighting the good fight, trying to, keep the city rolling and get everything going on. And then we saw that slow change started with Ethan Berkowitz, who was there until the whole Buttgate scandal, which if you don't know about that, that's hysterical, by the way, the whole Berkowitz Buttgate. And then we saw the assembly slowly morph into something that was definitely more progressive than anything that they had seen heretofore in the past. And so at some point, you got to ask that, the citizens of Anchorage who are listening to this, and because I'm not on any radio stations in Anchorage, you're probably listening on the podcast or you're or you're listening through the stream or on one of the social medias, you guys got to start asking your politicians, how did we get here? And quite honestly, I think it was a culmination of things, and I think it was the policies, the lax policies of the city itself, the reversal of policies like SB 91, which was a state thing. That was a legislature issue. That was not necessarily the city, but the city again felt the brunt of it. And then a lot of the policies that we're seeing being implemented by the assemblies, where again, it appears that they're not interested in punishing criminal behavior, whether and mostly I'm thinking about what's going on with the homelessness situation down there, where it's creating some other knock-on effects, like tourists aren't necessarily feeling safe or comfortable to go downtown. I mean, they can't even go to the park that's in the center of town, the square park there next to the Performing Arts Center. The place looks like well, I mean, every time I drive by there's a whole bunch of problems with homelessness and everything else, even in the summer. And how are you going to encourage tourists to do a walkabout in downtown to patronize the businesses and do all that kind of stuff when people don't necessarily even feel safe around there? And if you've been following what's going on in Anchorage, I'm sure you've seen the photo essays from several different outlets, including Must Read has had one. I know the Landmine has had several, where they just walk around and they snap pictures of people, basically half naked, laying in, entryways to businesses, or laying around with cardboard boxes on themselves or whatever. We're not fixing the issue. And instead, it seems like the issue has become exacerbated and gotten even worse. So, what is the solution? I don't know. We need to identify the cause first, and then we could figure out what the solution is. But we do know that whatever they are doing right now is not working properly, because Anchorage seems to be getting more brutal, more violent. People feel, I guess, emboldened to commit some of these crimes, like this vandalism and everything else. Now, is there some kind of mental health aspect? I'm sure that there's probably something going on there. But the question is this the community you want to live in? And I think the answer is no. And this has nothing to do, by the way, with their financials, with the financial situation, which we know is already getting worse, because now they're talking about yet another form of taxation in Anchorage, because they're feeling the pinch on revenue and everything else. And again, they've never seen a dollar they didn't want to spend. We're already seeing more issues there. Now they're talking about new rental taxes and everything else. I mean, it won't be long. It won't be long before Anchorage has a sales tax, a citywide sales tax, and probably another rental tax, and I'm sure some other form of tax, because that seems to be the answer for all of these politicians that have been there, is just to continue on. And yet the city continues to fall apart around people. I don't think it's a money issue. I think it's a leadership issue. I think it's a prioritization issue. I think it's a accountability issue, where you're not holding people accountable for things that are going on. And the ones that are suffering, obviously, are the people that live and work in the city. I mean, I don't want to I was a little worried, because if I have to travel, or if I have to fly out of Anchorage or something like that, I could park my car at $20 a night at the park and ride, or I could park it at a friend's house, or, at the station or so. But I'm afraid, do I leave my car around there for 4 or 5 days, where people, it's just, it starts to trickle down into everything that you're doing. And it's starting to harm the city. That's the thing. It's starting to harm the city. And I wish there were, I wish that people were, again, being more self-aware and were paying closer attention to figure out why these things are happening in a community like Anchorage. But it just seems like they're not. And the political infighting has become so bad that many people are many people are just kind of tuning it all out now at this point, which again is not going to help. Which is again not going to help. It's just not. But remember, people are like, why do we care about what's going on in Anchorage? Because as goes Anchorage, so goes the rest of the state eventually, folks. We've seen that time and time and time again. Anchorage has something happen or goes in a certain direction, and here we are. The next thing you know, it's coming into your community as well. So that's why we care about that kind of stuff. All right. We're going to be getting into this piece from Michael Tavalerio about the 4 essential things that he sees for Alaska. And he says if Alaska doesn't fix these 4 essential things, we're headed for a titanic crisis, like grinding up against the rocks kind of titanic crisis. So we're going to get into that here in just a moment. And then Will Stapp will be joining us. Will, at the top of the hour, here to talk about his debate on defined benefits and more. We'll be back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Let's go back here to some of the comments to see what you guys have been talking about. No real snow, blah, 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 blah. Anthony said, I use Anchorage like the canary in the coal mine. Once it dies, I know Alaska's in trouble and needs to pull back out of the tunnel. Yeah. I mean, as soon as it starts swooning, you probably should pull back out of the tunnel. And that's, I think, where we're at right now. We're at the swoon phase of the canary is dipping and bobbing on the perch like, whoa, what's going on? Let's see. Harold was talking. The Alaska Airline Center is going to be the shelter for the time being. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And he says he expects that the Sullivan Arena will probably also be converted to long-term shelter. Well, that'll be a state thing. We'll have to see what they did there. Brian says, I think they did ID the shooter on this one that happened yesterday. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking at the story that was published 17 hours ago that they didn't have any further information on it, Brian. If you've got more info, I'd love to see it. Hit me with it. Terry says the Anchorage Assembly is allowing this criminal behavior. Brian said his office down in Anchorage has lost a lot of windows in the past few years. I mean, yeah, that's. Let's see. One would think, says Richie, the individuals that were selected to lead our state might have seen how well soft on crime and other unicorn nonsense policies have worked out for Chicago, Minneapolis, Portland, etc. No, I mean, I think they continue to. I mean, look at some of our homeless policies, right? We've emulated a lot of the homeless policies that we saw in Seattle and Portland. And what did it give the folks in Seattle and Portland? More homelessness, more exacerbated homelessness. We didn't take a look at what they were doing in some places like Texas, San Antonio, and outside of Austin. They've actually done some things to get some of the people off the street, but we're emulating places that are having a horrific time, you know? It's crazy. It's funny, but not funny, said Anthony. But whenever I have to head into Anchorage, I've realized that an extra 2 mags for both my pistol and SBR have become a standard addition of my packing list. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Richie says, how about we start telling them we recognize this dumpster fire and are done with a lip service? Either they fix it or they're out. I mean, that would be great. That would be great. Let's see. I'm scrolling down here. Scrolling down. Who pays for it, MD? Who pays for what? The analysis of what's going on? I'm not sure what you're talking about there specifically. I'm going here through here. Anchorage is not unique, says Brian. Most of the larger cities are suffering similar fates. Chicago was one of the first to enter into the death spiral. I think Detroit probably takes that prize, but you're not wrong. Yeah, everything is there. You don't get wrong. Let's see. Good thing this is an entertainment show, says Harold. Good. Are you entertained? If not, feel free to hit the dial and go somewhere else. That's fine. Yeah, wow, David is a ray of sunshine. David said, this has already happened. The more conservatives that leave, the more room there is for liberals to fill the vacuum. People are moving to Anchorage from cities that are far worse than Anchorage by comparison. Anchorage isn't that bad. Well, I mean, okay. All right. There you go. Yeah, man shot and killed in Midtown Anchorage. That's I was looking at the ADN story, which hasn't been updated. Let me get back over there to that one. Thank you, Brian. Man chart, whoop, and the story just disappeared. Dang it. It's one of those stories. It was right there. Where is it? Where's my local story? Well, I'll get to it later. We're not going to cover it in the next 48 seconds. Thank you, Brian. Felon in possession. Oh, God. The suspect, later identified as 36-year-old Joshua Gibbs, was detained by police before being placed under arrest and charged with second-degree murder as well as third-degree assault and felon in possession. All right. Well, there you go. We'll see what happens from there. Okay. We got to jump back into it. Gotta go. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go. Right now.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, welcome back to the program. Let me just say hats off to Brian, who helped me get some more details, because I was reading the story in the ADN on that shooting that happened in Midtown yesterday, and he was able to pull up the story from Anchorage, from KTUU. And they apparently have found the guy who shot somebody over at the Midtown gas station. And of course, the only reason I bring it back up, because I know we were kind of done with that, but I just wanted to point out that, again, this is a continuing problem. The suspect was detained by police before being placed under arrest and charged with second-degree murder as well as third-degree assault and felon in possession charges. So he was already a felon. He wasn't supposed to have a gun, and yet he had a gun and he killed somebody. For what reason? I don't know. I haven't read the rest of the story yet, but again, why do you think that being soft on criminals is going to fix the problem? Why do you think that Johnny was such a nice boy until he got that gun and then he became a robber? Oh, man, come on. Seriously, get out of here. Get out of here with that. All right. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about this article from Michael Tavolerio over at The Watchman. He's written for The Watchman and for Must Read and for several other publications. He's pretty active in politics, and he talks about what he sees as being some of the biggest problems and the four essentials that has to be that the state of Alaska has to kind of get a grip on. Right. He said the next election cycles in 26 and 28 can't be fought on political gossip, personality, or petty partisanship. Good luck, Michael. Good luck getting any of those out of an election. I mean, I'm just saying good luck with that, right? He said they must be built around four essentials of the state of Alaska: health and social services, education, energy and natural resources, and the permanent fund. He said, today, Alaska's government behaves like a driver fussing over chipped paint while the engine seized up from lack of oil. Legislators tinker. Legislators tinkle. Jeez Louise. Maybe they are. Maybe the legislators are just tinkling around. I don't know. Legislators tinker at the edges of policy, but the powertrain, the structure that moves the state forward, remains broken. So he starts off with health and social services, what he calls the expanding sinkhole. And he's not wrong. He's not. Remember, this was the big worry when Bill Walker was governor, and he instituted all of the optional Medicaid programs that were available. And there was a hue and cry about, hey, do you know what this is going to cost the state? And of course, we were told, oh, don't worry. The federal government will always pay for this. And of course, we brought up examples of how the federal government had started many programs by saying that they would pay for that. And then within a few short years, of course, the state was picking up a half to all of the bill. Health and social services is the single largest drain on Alaska's operating budget, consuming over 40% of general fund spending. But the system has grown into a bureaucratic labyrinth that sustains itself rather than the people it serves. Every year, more is spent while fewer citizens achieve independence from the state programs. The Department of Health has become a fiscal sinkhole, absorbing resources that could be used to build jobs, infrastructure, and opportunity. I'm going to take issue with him there, though. I mean, the government doesn't build jobs. Government does not build jobs. Government can incentivize certain things, but government doesn't build anything in that regard. The only thing the government builds is infrastructure, right? But they don't build jobs. They need to get out of the way. That was a little bone to pick there. But they've got to start looking at this. They've got to start looking at health and social services. They've got to tie funding to measurable outcomes. Meritocracy, amazing. You've got to streamline overlapping programs and shift from managing dependency to enabling self-reliance. Oh, and while we're there, why don't we make sure that we take a deep dive on the fraud, right? Again, there's anecdotally, we should look into it. I'm not saying that definitively there is or there isn't, but there's been enough anecdotal reporting on, fraud we should be looking into it just to make sure. Then he goes on to education, high cost, low return. Education stands as Alaska's second largest expenditure and our second largest failure. Billions are invested annually, yet test scores remain near the bottom nationally. And enrollment continues to decline as families seek alternatives. Which, again, not shocking to me, folks. It's not. This is what I've been saying for years. You're going to see the out-migration from the school system and from the state, but more importantly, from the school system. The people will remain, but they'll just pull their kids out because they're sick of a lot of the problem that are going on there and the lack of educational progress. But again, the problem isn't the lack of money. It's something fundamentally systemic in what they're doing. He says reform means empowering parents, rewarding excellence in teaching, and aligning school funding with outcomes rather than bureaucracy. Until we fix education, every other investment in Alaska is for naught. Then he talks about energy. Energy should be Alaska's natural strength, yet it has become our greatest vulnerability. We sit atop vast resources, but we import electricity and fuel at some of the highest costs in the nation. I mean, we're gonna be importing. I don't know. You're saying importing electricity, but we have to import the gas to create the electricity. That's what he's talking about. We have 17 trillion cubic feet of gas on the North Slope, but we can't get it together to figure out a way to try and make it economical to do. Or we could build a power plant on the North Slope and transmit it over DC Longwire. I mean, there's so many different ways we do. We are a resource-rich state, and it is the regulatory and political gridlock that has crippled any kind of new development. What makes an economy grow is cheap, reliable, affordable energy. That's what makes an economy grow. And we can't keep buying into the whole green energy thing just read Sarah Montalbano's piece on the green energy crisis. And you'll get a better idea of what that's costing us in the long run through subsidies and everything else. I mean, we need to be open to everything, including nuclear. We should be exporting innovation, not excuses, says Michael. And finally, the permanent fund dividend, which is, again, unique among Alaskans. It's the most visible symbol of how unique we are because we have this collectivist constitution that basically says we all own it in common, the resources together. But it's basically been reduced to the political wiffle ball. It's a bargaining chip. What was once unthinkable and non-negotiable has become a casualty of the power struggles and propaganda that we see in the legislature. We need to get back to where the PFD connects every Alaskans to the state resource. And we've got to enshrine this. We've got to protect it. We've got to put it into the Constitution so the politicians can't keep meddling with it. But I mean, it's a big lift. It's a big lift, and we've got many on both the left and the right who will fight against that because they bought into their own propaganda about how it's a dichotomous question of, do you want taxes or do you want a PFD? The PFD is paid for, folks. The PFD is paid for by the earnings of the fund. This idea that somehow you'd have to be taxed to pay for the PFD is wrong because the PFD is fully funded and paid for. But they take it and spend it on other things. That's the difference. Do you really want all those other things? That should be the bigger question. Those things should have to fight amongst themselves to get funded. All right, you can go out and read this article over at the Alaska Watchman. We're going to continue. We got more coming up. Will Stapp is up next. We're going to talk about his debate on defined benefits with Chuck Kopp. It was a doozy if you didn't catch it. We'll be back with more right after this. Okay, let me get caught up here. Oh, I see Will Stapp's in the green room now. I wasn't looking at the chat room during my rantables moment. Let me get through some of these comments and then we'll jump over to Will here in just a minute and see what you guys got to say here. Good morning, Bill. What are you? You almost didn't make the 6 o'clock club, Bill. What's going on? Anthony said, it's like the old saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people he wasn't real. He said, the government will pay for it is the same when you realize the government has no money to spend without taking it from you. That's the fact. Sourdough Seal says, if things keep going the way that they are, people will begin leaving in droves. I'd be gone already if I wasn't in the oil industry, but even that isn't that enticing to keep people around anymore. Raylan says, main problem is the judges and the district attorneys not going after criminals to make the numbers look good. The police are done doing the job they're supposed to do. Then the criminals get a slap on the wrist and out 5 minutes later doing the same thing. Raylan says that Fairbanks is going right behind Anchorage. Hello, Shelley. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, where's your money going in education? Sarah needs to be on the show, said Terry. She's going to, I think we're going to have her on the show probably next week. She's been busy. She's been traveling. I tried to get her on the show last week, but she's traveling. Bill said I'd answer, but this is a family show. Yeah, like that stopped you before. All right. Let's go over here. The real, see, I have a little, everybody's upset about Will with the BSA thing. Well, I mean, I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater here, folks. I think Will has got a very good take on the whole defined benefits thing. And if you want to just ignore him because you didn't like his vote on something else, that's a little short-sighted, in my opinion. Will and I will disagree on the BSA thing, but that's not, I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's said and done. The next battle is over the defined benefits thing. And if you don't think that's going to suck all the oxygen out of the room at some point, you're wrong. You're wrong. Because that is the $1 billion hole that we're about to cut in the floor. And so disagree with Will all you want on this other thing, but you best start paying attention to what he's talking about with this defined benefits thing, because this thing could get nasty real quick. I was watching some highlights of the debate, and now I couldn't find the link. I was going to take some of the audio cuts out, and I couldn't find the link this morning. I was trying to do maybe it's the cold medicine, but I could not find where I had gotten the information. Anyway, we're going to ask Will to recreate some of those comments because there was some good stuff in there when he was arguing about this stuff. So again, don't let the struggle for perfect, let you trip right over the good, because while Will and I don't agree on everything on this thing, I think we're in perfect alignment. And again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. No. Yeah. Sorry, Bill is Kelly, Michael Dukes. He's like weighing the options. Do I get up? Yeah, no, Bill, you made the right choice, my friend. You made the right choice. All right. Everybody's mad. Everybody's mad about the BSA. I mean, it is what it is at this point. Everybody's mad. I mean, I'm ambivalent at this point. I knew it was going to happen. I mean, it is what it is. Well, at this point, until you revamp the whole system, this is exactly what you're going to get. All right, let's go over here and test some audio with Will Stapp here on the program. Good morning, Will. How are you this morning?
Oh, good, Michael. How are you?
Just another beautiful day here in paradise. That's all I could say. Another beautiful day in paradise. You ready to tackle in on this?
Oh, always ready.
Okay, good. And like I said, I was just saying, I watched some of the highlights of your debate, and I couldn't find the damn thing this morning, because you really got into it with one of the things where you were talking about, and forgive me, you were talking about what some of the actuarials were saying, and that you actually came back and said, but they were factoring it on what their best case scenario was, not the worst case scenario. And I think that was one of the showstoppers in your whole debate there. So I definitely want to focus in on that and everything, but we'll start you out fresh here, and you can give us the full rundown. and that everybody is upset with you for the BSA vote, Will. I don't know what to say. I mean, I disagreed with you on it, but I mean, again, it wasn't like they weren't going to get the $200 the next year. I mean, I was upset that anybody voted to override the governor, but at the same time, what difference does it make at this point? What's another $200 million among friends at this point? The question is, what's going to happen this next year? And we might tackle that question at the end of the show. What's going to happen next year? Because it won't just be the BSA, or won't just be the defined benefits that's going to be, brought up on the table. It's going to be another bite at the BSA. They're already saying it. They've already said that was a nice start, but now we want another 1,000. So we'll see what they say there. All right. So I'm going to pull you back in the green room, and we're going to come back to this. We'll just continue. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh yeah, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com. Across the state of Alaska, yada, yada, yada. You know where we are here. Welcome back to the program. And we are ready to go here, jumping into it, a discussion with Representative Will Stapp here in hour 2, talking about defined benefits. Now, we said that there's going to be some big things that are on the horizon for this coming year. And we also know that this coming year, financially, fiscally, is going to be a train wreck. I mean, it's going to be tough because we're pretty much flat broke, folks. There's not much left. They can't take much more of the PFD, although I feel like there won't be much of a PFD. They'll have a PFD this year simply because it's an election year. But if we weren't having an election year, I think this last one would have been our last PFD. Why? Because they need that money. They need the money for other things. And so we got the PFD's gone. They can't draw from that. There's only less than $3 billion left in the CBR. There is no other real source of revenue out there. And they're already talking about coming back for another bite at the apple for the BSA. And of course, defined benefits, which is going to be our discussion today with Will Stapp. He held a debate with Representative, Chuck Kopp over this issue. Now, Kopp, of course, a union guy, public safety, ostensibly a Republican, but all in favor of going all in on a defined benefits program for employees. And of course, we know that we still owe about $7 billion to the previous levels of defined benefits that the state had before they went to defined contributions. And yet they're coming back again. Will had some great points. I was just saying that I watched some highlights of the debate back and forth, and I couldn't find them this morning. I was going to play them for you because there's really some great commentary, and for some reason I couldn't find the link that I had watched early last week or late last week or whatever. Anyway, so we're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth. We're going to go over here and talk to Will and see what he has to say. Will Stapp joins us this morning on the program for our discussion. Good morning, Will. How are you doing this morning, my friend?
Oh, another day in paradise, Michael. How are you?
It's good. I guess you guys got no snow, so I mean, I guess it's
Yeah.
no snow
Never,
across, no snow
never to be
across.
more. Yeah, never to be more thankful that I don't live in Anchorage. So
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It's all good. Well, Will, I want to get started on this, but let's lay some groundwork to begin with here, and talk a little bit about this, and we'll get into some of the other issues that people want to talk about late in the show. We'll keep the last segment for other issues that are coming up. But you decided to debate. Tell me how this debate came about. This debate between you and Chuck Kopp over the defined benefits program. Tell me what this was all about.
yeah, so it was sponsored by Commonwealth North, which is a pretty good organization that likes to kind of get into the nitty gritty of a bunch of different issues that are facing the state of Alaska. And I actually was supposed to be Senator Bert Stedman and Representative Kopp, and then Senator Stedman couldn't make it, so they asked me to kind of come off the bench. It's like the backup quarterback to kind of take on the issue, which I was more than happy to do, and really just talk to the public in a forum. Forum was, obviously most of the people in the crowd that day were members of organized labor, which obviously they have a vested interest pension, and I want everybody to kind of know that, like, look. Pensions are like great things if you can have them. But the saying I always have is better benefits cost more money. And the real problem that I have with the conversation around, a change in the employee benefit package in the state is the advocates are not saying it costs more money. They're saying it costs less money. And that's a problem.
Right.
And that's a big problem because, in life, you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. And if pensions cost the state substantially less money, we would have never gotten rid of them in the first place, right? So,
right.
And like I said, I don't have most of the folks I know, especially on the other side of the aisle, Democrats, stuff like that. I mean, they're very confident in a pension, and they would probably support it if it costs $10 billion as opposed to $2 billion. My argument is like, look, you really just need to be honest and transparent about kind of the fundamental mechanics of this stuff. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And historically, I benefited from just having all the evidence on my side of the performance of the plan. But yeah, no, it was a great opportunity. I'm glad we finally got to have the conversation. And people really need to know that there is risk and danger in kind of going down a pathway that the legislature is not prepared for, right? So ideally, you would have some sort of funding mechanism in place before you would say, okay, we're going to do this for our public sector employees. And for those of you who don't know, it's really because the state of Alaska's constitution makes this what's called a one-door decision. So what do I mean by that? I mean, the Constitution of the state of Alaska says we can't diminish a benefit to a retiree. So like if you give a retiree something, like it is that from now until the end of time, really, or till the employees are all gone, and you can't undo it. So like a lot of times in the legislature that we pass something or we do something, you're going to find that we can go back the next year and fix something or change something. That's really not the case with a retirement type package. So.
Right. Well, and let's talk about historically, because again, we had a defined benefits program. There was a defined benefits program in this state that was formed, and it went through 3 different revisions, each one a diminishing benefit, from tier 1 down to tier 3. But remind us what happened. I mean, we ended up in the hole almost $14 billion in unfunded liabilities for employees. And as you said, because the Constitution says you can't reduce the benefit to somebody who's already been promised it, it created some problems. Walk us through what happened.
Yeah, so we'll start with what people say, and then we'll go with what actually happened, right? Because there's a material difference here. So kind of the adage is the state had an actuary, it was called Mercer. Mercer basically lied to the state about some of their numbers, which created about a $2 billion liability in the state's pension plan. All right, that's true, right? That happened. The state sued Mercer. We got about $500 million of our money back in a settlement. But that's not, $2 billion is not 14 billion, right? So like understand that yes, Mercer made a mistake and yes, it cost the state a lot of money, but the pension plan was actually in trouble a lot of years prior and it got substantially worse a lot of years after. And if you look at the historic trends of all pension plans, which I did in my presentation, if you go back to the year 2000, 2001, most state-sponsored pension plans, I cited a study that studied 185 of them, were relatively in good funding status in the year 2000, 2001. But today, you have about $1.4 trillion in unfunded pension liabilities across every pension plan in this entire country, right? So the question is like, how did that actually happen? Obviously, Mercer didn't, do actuary work for all pension plans across the entire country and
Right.
So how'd you get there? And you realize like, okay, well, when you study it, you find that getting two primary reasons, right? Number one, assumptive rate of return, and two, actuarial assumptions, right? So what does that mean? Basically, you thought the plan was going to do better than it did, i.e. the market performance was going to do better. Market performance didn't do better. And then your actuary comes back and revises their expectations on certain performances of the plan, all right? And, I talked about that too in the debate. So I went back into the archives, which is everyone should try to do once. Like our legislature, we have really good archives. And I went back to Senate Finance table of a conversation between Senator Bert Stedman and Senator Lyman Hoffman back in 20 years ago, back in 2005, right? And I'm like, okay, so what was the understanding at the time over the defined benefits plan? Because they would ultimately go away from it later that year. And you found out that they were operating under a bunch of assumptions. There was a liability in the healthcare portion, and there was, of course, the Mercer issue. And you find out that the raw numbers that they keep talking about are total liabilities on the plan of $12.6 billion and an unfunded liability of about 5.7 that would expected to rise to $6.1 billion. Okay, so that's how much trouble that they were in back in 2005. All right. So what's important to know that the liability on the plan that was unfunded, which would have been in 2006, was $6.2 billion. That was their expectation. Well, today, 20 years later, the unfunded liability on the pension plan is actually higher in terms of monetary value than it was 20 years ago. Okay, it's $7.2 billion today. And keep in mind, we have a closed plan. We didn't add any new people to it after 2006.
Right.
All right. And not only that, but we have made billions of dollars in additional state and local contributions to enhance the funding status of the plan. Like every single year in the legislature, we appropriate millions upon millions of dollars to pay additional costs for employees, retirements. The vast majority of them don't actually work for the state. And kind of the analogy I give folks, if you pay property taxes, like in Anchorage or in Fairbanks or in Kenai or Matsu, a greater percentage of your property taxes that you pay to your local government actually goes to fund the pension liability of a retiree than it goes to fund a new employee's retirement plan.
Right.
Okay, think about that. Like
Right.
you are paying more money.
We're paying for employees that have been retired or no longer employed, have been there for years, and a bigger chunk of our money goes to them than it does to current employees.
Yeah, so like if you got snow plowing like in Anchorage, right? Like a bigger chunk of your property tax that's supposed to pay for that service goes to pay some guy or gal that you've never seen plow your snow in 20 years, all right? As opposed to contributing to the current retirement of the person who does every day, right? And like, okay, so how did you get into that problem? And to me, like, that's always an astounding thing to tell people because most people don't realize, like, hey, how much money we're actually paying for yesterday's employees as opposed to enhancing the benefits of today.
And this, of course, was what led to us leaving the defined benefits program as it was and moving to a defined contribution plan. And one of the biggest factors, of course, with this, and we can look back at this and analyze it, and as you see, go back and look to see what happened. But a lot of it had to do with, the cost of healthcare. Healthcare costs have skyrocketed. And when you promise somebody a specific benefit, you will have this healthcare. But the healthcare today costs, $10,000. And you're estimating that it's going to be $15,000 to $20,000 in 20 years. But we saw what happened with the healthcare costs in the country over a period of about 10 years. The costs, they almost quadrupled in a 10 or 12 year period. And so that's where a big chunk of that is coming from. That's why defined benefits programs have been going away across the country. Like you said, now over $1.5 trillion in unfunded liabilities across all these plans, because they couldn't pay for them, right? The government had to bail out Delta and GM and some of these other companies that had defined benefits programs, because there would have been no way for them to remain in business and pay for the old employees. That's why people have moved away from defined benefits plans, because you cannot predict that kind of stuff in the future.
Yeah, and again, so you have paid actuaries that kind of work on these predictions, okay? But the question is like, okay, so we pay actuary folks like smart math people, we pay them a lot of money to try to figure things out, okay? And the question is, when you're dealing with like statistical variability, right? Obviously, they're never going to be 100% accurate. So the question becomes like, okay, how often are they wrong about their assumptions, and how often do they revise their assumptions? And are those revisions, pro to the state or anti to the state in terms of fiscal liability? And if you go back 20 years, you're going to find that they've revised their assumptions on our existing retirement plans several times, 7 or 8 times, and every single time, without exception, it has been revised one way. So the joke I tell people, and by the way, that way is adverse to the state, i.e. the state has to pay more money now way. So the joke I tell people is 3 things are going to be true in life: death, taxes, and your pension is going to perform worse than you thought it would.
Right.
And when that happens, it creates an existing liability. So I'll give you a perfect example of that, right? So like if I go back to the year 2013, okay, remember the plan had been closed for half a decade at that point, no new people. So the liability, the amount of money that we thought we were going to pay out to our retirees, okay, if that number is like $13 billion, or excuse me, on PERS, it's like $13 billion just on PERS. Okay, if that were true, our pension plan today would have no liability. It would be overfunded if we could just get it right on what we owed 10 years ago. Okay, if you go back 20 years, we thought on PERS and TERS, we were only going to owe 12.6 billion. Okay, today we owe 25 billion total liability. All right, so like the amount of money that we thought we were going to pay retirees in their health and their retirement benefits is actually double what our actuarial analysis was back in 2005. Okay, so what does that mean? Like, so imagine you go out to buy a house and you take out a $200,000 loan to pay for your house, and then 20 years goes by, you think you have 10 years left on your loan, and your house loan is now like $410,000.
Right.
And even though you made additional payments,
Right. No, it's insane. And that's where we're going, which leads us to now this push to return to that. And we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. Will Stapp is our guest. We're going to continue with him here. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. The push is on, but what is it really going to cost? We're going to have that conversation with Will in just a moment. Back with more after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're back. Will Stapp, our guest here on the program. David makes a valid point. And again, this is what we saw going up into this discussion, the initial discussion, when Alaska moved off of the defined benefits programs. But David says the federal government knew that DB was unsustainable, so it put it in its new employees in defined contribution plans starting in 1986. Even the DOD put its military on defined contributions plans starting for new members in 2010. He said it saw the writing on the wall. I mean, and we knew that. This was part of the problem, and we fought it longer than almost any place else in the nation. Even though we had stories, like I said, Delta and GM, those are just two of the biggest ones that had to be bailed out because they couldn't do it. You're not going to find a major corporation or private entity that's going to do a defined benefits program anymore because they know that they cannot properly predict what the benefit is going to be worth 20 years from now. Will?
Yeah, no, it comes down to like how you calculate risk, right? And again, I don't what is a pension, right? What are we trying to achieve here, right? A pension is basically, I'm going to make you, Michael, a promise of X amount of your salary when you retire. All right. So now I got to reverse engineer an outcome. All right. And when you reverse engineer an outcome, when you have levers of performance that you don't control, like I don't control investment returns in the stock market, right? You have a lot of variability. All right. So if you're going to do that, and like I said, pensions aren't a bad thing because they give employees like great retirement security, right? You know, like I'm going to make X amount of my salary and retire. So now who's taking the risk for that, though? And again, the state and the taxpayer are going to be taking the risk for that. So what has to happen? Well, certain things have to happen in order to that plan to perform well enough. And when you study the plan's performance historically, you're going to find that, hey, the same assumptions that were made on certain aspects like rate of return, 2005, you know, our rate of return was supposed to be 8.25% on our defined benefits plan. That's what our actuary said would happen over 20 years. Well, guess what? Our rate of return to now is projected at 7.25%. Okay, that's 100 basis points. What's 100 basis points over time? That's $1 billion every 10 years, people. That's how big a number that is, right? So, okay, fundamentally, like if I'm using 7.25% as my discount rate, what is a discount rate? Discount rate is like the cost of employees to buy the future value of their pension. Okay, so the way the bill works is everyone, all state employees, they got to buy their pension benefits with their existing like 401k if they want to buy the pension, right? So they get to buy that at the discount rate of 7.25%. The higher the discount rate means the lower the cost of the future value of benefits. So if you use a big number, you pay less to buy the pension. If you use a small number, you pay more to buy the pension, okay? So what happens if everyone buys the pension benefits at 7.25% and that number goes down to 6.25%? Like what happens if the number gets revised down? I know the number's going to get revised down. Like I can say that almost unequivocally. And the reason I know that is because the national average on all pension plans in the discount rate is 6.8%. And all of the pension plans that are funded, because there are a few in the country that are well funded, Washington, Tennessee, South Dakota examples, right? Like every one of those states who supposedly does defined benefits well, they use a smaller number than the one we're using, right? So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that, hey, we were way wrong 20 years ago. We are going to be wrong again because our numbers that we are using are substantially more fanciful than everyone else, you know? And like, I would love for our investment returns and our pension plans to get like 20% market returns. That's probably not going to happen. And if I'm trying to plan for a liability, right, I probably shouldn't pretend like it's going to happen.
Right. Well, that's the betting on the best case scenario every freaking time. And that's where we're at. What is the unfunded liability peak in the future years? Asked David. Can you tell me that in 20 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So basically, we're going to pay it off because the employees are, you know, they're going to live out their retirement life. Let's put it that way. Right. So we'll be through that liability in the late 2030s because we pay off additional contributions, bar some massive stock market crash. So we will be through the unfunded liability by the end of the next decade.
All right. Next decade. All right. Will Stapp, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, yes. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Representative Will Stapp is our guest. He participated at a Commonwealth North forum in a debate with Representative Chuck Kopp over defined benefits. Now, Will, I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit here at the beginning of this. Why are we pushing back for defined benefits now? What is the momentum here? Is this simply to take care of employees? Is it simply to, to feather the nests of the people in the unions? What is your take on why all of a sudden we're coming back to if there's a problem, not fixing defined contributions, not bolstering up that program, but again, throwing that all out and going back to the program that created so many problems for us? What's the push here?
Yeah. Okay. So I think lots of different motivations from people. Some people just love the notion of pensions, but the state has a recruitment and retention problem, right? I mean, that's very evident. That's probably not that dynamically different to kind of everyone's kind of workforce challenges right now with recruitment and retention. But the state has a recruitment and retention problem, especially on retention side. The argument that these folks are going to make is, hey, this is all because we don't have a pension. And basically what happens in Alaska is public employees work for us and then they move to the beaches of Kauai, Hawaii. And they do that not because they love the beach so much, but because Hawaii has a pension or California has a pension, the state of Alaska doesn't. Right. So this is like a legitimate problem. Like, how do you fix a legitimate problem? All right. So ICER, when they presented at the same forum, they basically said, look, there's really not a material difference in retention in their study with defined benefits or defined contribution, but there is if you give people better benefits and pay them better, right? So better benefits cost more money. So if you want to retain employees, you got to pay them more money and you got to invest more in their retirement. So it doesn't really matter. So you kind of, to quote Deng Xiaoping, right? It doesn't matter if the cat's black or white, so long as it catches the mice. Just know in this scenario, if you want to retain people who work for you, you're going to have to pay them better and you're going to have to contribute more to their retirement accounts, right? So the question is like, okay, the fundamental crux of my problem with the way this is framed by the advocates is like they say, one, it's going to solve almost all the retention problems. That's fundamentally untrue. I can do that empirically too. All I do is I go back and I compare what the state's retention issues were when I had a better pension program in tier 3, right? So like, if I know that this new bill is worse than what I had in tier 3, which is true, by the way, and I look at my retention percentages of public employees under tier 3, like I can assume fairly confidently that my new pension plan, which is worse than tier 3, is not going to retain employees as well as tier 3 did. That's a pretty good assumption, right?
Right. That makes sense. Well, and again, this is what kills me. They say that's what it's all about. That's what the retention problem is that it's only the defined benefits, is only not having a pension, it's only the pay issue. But yet if you do a survey, and the fact is that they're not even doing exit surveys for these employees when they leave as to why are they leaving. That's not even happening, which, you would know more if you could find why are you leaving? Is it a money? But amongst many of the people, when they talk about this in their jobs, money is usually not even in the top 3 issues for why somebody is leaving a job. And that's part and parcel of the problem. But you said your biggest issue is the fact that they're just outright lying when they say, oh, this defined benefits program, it's going to save us money. It's going to cost less. It's going to save us money. We'll be money ahead. And that's just not true.
Yeah. I would agree. I'm not going to say that they're lying. I'm going to say that they're kind of playing fast and loose with the truth, though, right? And I'll tell you how they get there, right? They get there by saying all of these retention program issues are going to be fixed, so the state will spend far less money on recruitment and retention of new employees. So you have less employee turnover, means you save training costs. Okay, like that's not going to be fundamentally as good as what they say. I said because you can just compare how well that was under our previous tier 3, which was a better program. So you know it's not going to solve the retention problem. Like when I went back in 2005, when I played those clips from Senator Stedman and Senator Hoffman, like Senator Hoffman's big objection to going away from DB back in 2005 was, quote, there is a crisis in recruitment and retention of teachers in rural Alaska. All right. So that was when we had a pension plan. So like, obviously having a pension plan was not the factor in the crisis in recruitment and retention of teachers in rural Alaska, because we have that same problem today So there must be other factors that play into that. So the second thing really is, how they get there on the math is they give you a number on all these savings for recruitment and retention. So the problem with that math, and this is just fundamental problem, if I give them all the recruitment and retention savings, Michael, what is the cost of the future value of the employee who gets step increases every year by the time they retire? All right, so if I work for the state and I'm replaced, let's say, by 2 people in the course of 10 years, right? So I turn over and you got to hire, so you incorporate those recruitment and retention costs 3 times in a workforce cycle. What is the value of not doing that and then having to pay the retiree 2.5 times salary of when they started? You see what I mean? So you might save money on the front end, but you don't actually save money because now you're committing to a certain percentage of salary for the rest of their life on the back end, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's kind of, it'd be nice to not have to recruit and retain as many, have as much turnover, and that's a goal we should work for. But you can't tell me it's going to spend money or save money, because basically I'm just going to spend more money on the employee on the back end. Which, okay, that's not a bad thing. You want people to retire and have good benefits, right? But don't tell me it's going to save money, because it's not.
Right. Well, and you had a very interesting point that you made, and it was one of the clips that I wanted to bring up, where you specifically talked about the undervaluation and the returns on the fund. And you talked about, again, planning for the best case instead of planning on the worst case. If you're doing any kind of planning, especially financial planning, any business will tell you that you always try and plan on the worst case scenario just to make sure that you're covered. Anything beyond that is gravy, and it's all good and Gucci. But if you're planning, especially in something like this, where we've had a history of underfunding and planning poorly, the idea that these actuarials were planning for the best case scenario, walk me through that, because that was probably one of the best parts of the whole debate, where you kind of line that out. Yeah.
So, okay. Fundamentally, so what's the bill do? All right. So the bill's got some good features in it for a pension bill. All right. So it says, hey, if our math gets messed up, the employee contribution is going to go up, the employer contribution is going to go up, and the post-retirement pension adjustment of the retiree is going to go away. All right. That's like a COLA. Your COLA adjustment is going to go away if the plan's not funded. All right. So what does that mean if your math is wrong? So what I say is look, if I look at the existing experience on my pension plans currently for the state, if they're not at 90% funded status, which ours were not, that means a teacher or public safety officer under this new bill could, in theory, not get a COLA adjustment to their retirement income for a decade or 2 decades. Okay. So if I compared no COLA adjustment to what my existing DC plan is expected rate of return, the Equitable Institute in New York actually found that, well, if you don't get a COLA adjustment, then the DC plan is actually better value over time. So now you're talking about benefit diminishment of a new retirement plan. So the mechanics of the bill make an unfunded liability probably unlikely, because you just take more money from the employee, which is capped, and the employer. But if you're going to take more money from the employer, i.e. municipalities in the state, what is that number? And you find out that minuscule increases in that percentage that you take from the employer contribution equate to $25 million, right? So if you're off by a few percentage points, you got to jack that contribution rate up. Now you're adding hundreds of millions of dollars to the cost of the plan. That's going to be paid for by somebody. And the way it operates currently is municipal governments have this 22% cap. So if you got to increase employer contribution, they're like Anchorage police or something. The municipality's not going to pay anymore. So that burden goes all onto the state. So that's how you get a big runaway liability, And by the way, if I'm right and you use smaller, more conservative assumptions, the problem you have is oh, I have more money than I need to pay retirees. So therefore I can give retirees better benefits when they retire. Okay. If you use liberal estimates on performance, you could have a financial disaster, right? So it doesn't make sense at all to use unconservative numbers on this, because again, if it makes sense, do it. And it makes sense to use a conservative approach, because nothing bad happens if you're wrong.
Right. Exactly. Well, again, That's again, all your surprises will be happy ones if you plan for the
Exactly.
worst, kind of thing, right?
You know, like, oh, you know what? You know what? In 20 years, if your plan's 150% funded, I can tell a trooper or teacher, hey, guess what? You're going to get more money this year when you retire. And I guarantee you they're never going to be unhappy about that, right?
Right, exactly. And so why the shenanigans then? Why the playing fast and loose to the truth? I mean, is it a sales pitch?
The state don't have any money, so they want to pretend like they can do something when they can't pay for it. All right. I mean, that's the fundamental truth, right? You don't, no reasonable person is going to sit here in the legislature and say, you know what we can really do right now? Add $2 billion liability over a decade. Or, you know, by the way, it's also a liability that the majority of the risk, if you're wrong, is going to fall on the state. And just to put that in terms, you know, PFD was $600 million this year, right? So, like, if you're adding $1 billion and your dividend is $600 million, that basically means you can't even, you know, dividend don't even cover it, right?
Right, exactly.
Like, can't go that.
Right.
So, you know, the fundamental reason they want to say that is because, you know, they know that with pretty confidence that, like, if we're going to take a conservative approach, it's going to cost more money. And then, you know, got more money. And by the way, the other reason is, and I'll tell you with the discount rate, okay? If I lower my discount rate, it costs the existing employee more money to purchase the pension. That means less existing employees will buy into the pension. See what I mean? So, like, if you're an advocate for your members, like, you know, I don't blame them for this, right? If I'm a union rep, if I'm a union head, right, and I want my employees to have a pension, I want the state to make it appear that that pension cost is as cheap as possible for them. That is advantageous, right?
Right.
I mean, that's their job. I don't blame them for doing their job, right? And they know if they use a lower, more conservative number, it'll increase the buy-in value of the future benefits of the pension. So they want to do that.
Yeah, but again, massaging the numbers to make them more attractive on the front end and actually costing us more on the back end doesn't help. I mean, the Reason Foundation came down and presented to the legislature and said, this is going to cost you $7 to $8 billion over 10 years. I mean, this is a significant amount of money when we're already underwater by over $1.5 billion going into the next, 5 years of we're upside down every year for the next 5 years. How are we going to make this fly?
Yeah, but I mean, keep in mind that's somebody else's problem, Michael. You see what I mean? Like, this is the fundamental issue, right? So if you slide the amount of money you owe 20 years from now, right? Now it's somebody else's problem. So again, I'll give you that Senate Finance Committee, right? 20 years ago, there are 2 people left from that, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
it's got to be somebody. The problem is there's not much more road to be kicking this can down. That's the problem. You can't keep kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, but also remember, you got a constitutional obligation. Okay, so if you get it back, then you're paying for it, come hell or high water, right?
Exactly. Well, some judge will look at that big juicy permanent fund and say, well, you got the money in the bank, figure out a way to pay for it. And again, having been on an assembly, I was on the Fairbanks assembly when we were paying off that liability and realizing that it was, $40-50 million a year that we're paying on this unfunded liability for employees who are no longer even employed. That's a problem as we go through.
Yeah.
All right. I think you've made a good point, and I think you've made a good argument for why we shouldn't be looking at defined benefits right now. Should we be looking at bolstering defined contributions? Because that was one of the recommendations.
So again, 2 things can be true at the same time, right? You do have a problem in certain employee groups, especially the ones that don't have the state supplemental benefit system with retirement, right? If you don't have SBS in the state, like, you're basically not contributing enough money to really have a strong retirement just on your 401k, okay? So, like, what can you do? So you can do a pension, and I'm not even going to tell people that's not a thing that you'd want to do for retention. I'm just going to say, like, if you're going to do that, you need to be, like, straight up honest about the risks, the liabilities. And you can't say stuff like it's almost bulletproof, right? Because guess what, folks? If you say something's almost bulletproof, that's what gets you shot. So
right,
let's
exactly.
not do that,
Yeah, no, let's pick that stuff up.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Final thought.
No, so I'll finish. So you can do, there's no windfall elimination percentage in Social Security. So you can look at putting people into Social Security. You can look at enhancing the defined contribution plan. You can looking at putting employees in supplemental benefit system. You can even do a hybrid where you just guarantee a lower amount of defined pension benefit and then split that with the 401k. So if you say, well, the state should take some risk, let's do a pension plan where we cap our liability at say like 35 or 40% of salary and put the rest of the money in the market, right? For the rate. So you can do a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
And the real issue is like, we're not looking at any of those things. We're just saying this is the one option. And again, if you look at the ICER folks, they say, well, that's great. But like our study says it's probably not going to do much in terms of retention, So
right.
you should, and you should look at all those things.
Yeah, you should be examining all those things for sure. All right, well, we are coming up on the break here. We got one more segment dead ahead with Will Stapp. We'll get his final thoughts on the defined benefits, and then we'll ask about some of the other big things, including a potential for another take for the BSA. We'll continue with more right after this, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Will Stapp is our guest. Will, and I think you said that we will be paid. We will have all of our previous 3 tiers of defined benefits will be paid off in another decade. What is the over on that, though? I mean, how much more how many billions more did we have to spend than what was planned for?
Yeah, it's look, here's the problem, right? So the problem is it's like a reverse self-licking ice cream cone. It's like a bottomless pit, okay? So what I say by that is like the amount of payouts of your liability are indexed to metrics that you don't control, okay? So most of the retirees under PERS, TERS, they get like a 90% inflation adjustment to their pay, okay? So guess what happened when Biden was president and inflation was like 8%, okay? We had to adjust the retirees' pay 90% of that. So like now that liability goes up and the cash goes out of the plan, and now the stock market's got to do even better, or you got to make even more contributions, right? So like right now, I would say that the Armed Board's assumptions are pretty good to pay that liability off by the end of 2039. They're very conservative. The state's going to have to make a lot of more additional contributions than we probably will to kind of get through that. But that all changes if you have like 2 years of bad market returns and high inflation. Then you're just hosed again, right?
Right.
Like, and again, this is the fundamental issue. So like, I'll give an example, right? So the first BSA bill we had, I voted no on it. One, it was too much money. 2, it had inflation adjustment, right? People talk about inflation adjusting.
Right, right.
You don't ever want inflation adjust things because I don't control inflation, right? I'm not the freaking the Federal Reserve. Like, because I don't control the mechanic, why would I tie how much money I got to pay to something to a mechanic I can't control?
And that's a key point, because again, if our unfunded liability when we got out of the plan was somewhere in the neighborhood of $13 billion. We paid several $1 billion since then into that liability. It's still at 7. We're going to take another 10 years to pay it off. I mean, that unfunded liability, by the time it's all said and done, we will have had to, the over that we've had to pay into this fund to make it all true. I mean, we got to be reaching into 20,
like $11 billion. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's a huge number. And so does it really save us money? No. Does it fix the retention problem? I think you made a brilliant argument to say, just look back at tier 3. We still had a retention problem. That's not the answer. They're saying it's this magic bullet, which we know it's not. And on top of that, it's the magic bullet that will kill us because it's going to hurt the state and the municipalities. Yeah.
And I mean, look, the main problem, like lots of problems, and I'll kind of conclude with that because I know we're going to move on, is like, look, I'm not going to ask people in the state to pay for people who don't do things for them, right? So right now, municipal contributions are capped, like City of Anchorage, right? Anchorage wants to give the city clerk a pension, great. You know what the people who live in Anchorage can do? They can pay for that, right? You shouldn't ask people who got to pay money, who don't live in Anchorage, to pay for Anchorage municipal employees. That's crazy. Don't do that, right? So if you want to tell the city governments, like, look, you do pension again, but going forward, if it don't work out, guess who's paying? The people who live in your town are going to pay for your own employees.
Right.
Like,
shouldn't go back to the state. It shouldn't be a state problem.
Exactly. And you know what the state will do? The state will pay for their employees. I'm not going to ask you who live in Homer to pay for some city clerk or librarian at the LUSAC in Anchorage. That's crazy. Why would you do that?
Right. No, and I think that's a valid complaint. How much support does this have, Will? I mean, because I think we saw
it's had 21 votes in the Senate. It's got 21 votes in the House. It's got 11 co-sponsors in the Senate. So that means it's got enough votes to pass. All right. And again, it may pass, may not. And it doesn't bother me like if people vote that way. I mean, they just need to be real here about what we're doing and like how much it costs. And I want people to go on and say, you know what, Michael, if you're somebody who's a big advocate, you say, you know what, Michael, I love pensions. I think they're great. And you know what, if it costs the state $10 billion, we're going to pay for it, and you're going to get taxed, and you're going to get your PFDs going to go away. And that's how much they love the pension. Just go out and tell people that, right?
Right. But they're not. They're going to be disingenuous about it because they know that won't fly.
Yeah, well, but this is fundamentally the problem. And by the way, you want to talk to us about some of the most inconsistent positions in the legislature. How on earth are you going to tell people you want to do defined benefits again and you want them to have their full PFD again? Tell me how that math works.
Right. It doesn't. Well, obviously, I mean, like you said, this year's PFD alone, the lowest PFD in history adjusted for inflation was $660 million. And if the pension fund and the liability, just the costs of that alone, approach $1 billion, there's nothing left. There is no more money in the piggy bank. That's the biggest problem there. All right, 20 seconds. I'll let you recap, and then we'll jump into some of the other things that we're going to be facing. Will Stapp is our guest. We're going to jump back into this. Please like and share, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that kind of stuff. You should share this show for folks who are all on the defined. They need to know the truth of what's going on. All right, Here we go. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap, again, my argument's really simple. It doesn't matter if it's black or white, right?
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, we're continuing with Will Stapp. One final segment here. We got about 7-8 minutes. Will, so just quick summation of your thoughts on the defined benefits. And again, I'm hoping that it doesn't go. I mean, I'm hoping even if it does pass, because you were just saying it's got 21 votes in the House and 11 in the Senate, 11 co-sponsors in the Senate. The governor said that he will veto it. He's already made that implication, so I hope that goes. But your final thoughts here, wrap it up on the defined benefits.
Yeah. So just know, folks, better benefits cost more money. All right. So if people want to spend more money on something, they should tell you what they want to spend more money on it and why. All right. And then you can make a determination of whether that's the best course of action or not. Again, I actually like pensions. I mean, I do employee benefits for a living. I've done it for a long time in insurance, So I think pensions are great, but they just cost more money. And all the evidence is always going to be on my side in that debate. Right. And like I said, I can pile it up for you. And if people tell you that they want public employees to have pensions again, just ask them where they're going to get the money from. And they should be able to tell you,
But who pays? That's right. I mean, that's the key.
Ask them okay, well, look, I'd love to give everybody in the state a pension for life, 100% of whatever they made. Everybody should have a pension. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Problem is, I don't the math don't work.
Yeah. Right? Arithmetic don't lie. That's for sure. All right. Well, let's look at one of the other big issues because we've already seen it. The School Teachers Association, the National Education Association, the Conference of School Administrators, a bunch of them have already come out with all the letters, and they're like, oh, well, this new BSA increase was great, but it's just the status quo. And we're coming back next year. I mean, they're already saying it. They're coming back next year. They're looking at that $1,900 level that they had originally, that Tobin had originally talked about as being the true BSA that they needed. Well, that's $1,200 more right now than we just got the approval. How do we pay for that? Is that what's going on with that? And what will your vote be on something like that?
Well, I mean, I voted against a lower number already. So people forget that there's two bills, right? There's $1,000 BSA bill that I voted no on. And there was a lesser BSA number that I voted yes on. And it's because of the money, right? I mean, my district wants another $1,100 increase in BSA. Guess what? No. Why? Don't have the money. And that's simple. And then you move on, right? So look, you can't blame people for advocating for things that they want, right? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do in politics. I don't blame my district and my new school board folks for telling me they want another $300 million to fix all their problems. But look, it's an easy conversation because I don't have $300 million. So that's that. And then you move on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, do these folks not understand that there is no more blood in the stone, right? I mean, do they understand that there's just...
I mean, that's not true. I mean, people say stuff all the time, Michael. Like, look, I mean, there's candidates running for governor who are promising things that are fundamentally untrue, and they go on shows and they do it all the time, you know? So, like, I don't know why people do that, right? I mean, like, I try not to do that. People get mad at me for not doing that, but I'd like to sleep at night, you know? So, like, unfortunately, if you don't have money to do things and you're not willing to tax people, you know, and you're not willing to do billions of dollars in spending cuts, like, you're not going to get outcomes. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get the things you tell people. So,
right.
Like, you know, I'll give you an example of full dividend, right? I mean, people come on the show, Bernadette Wilson, come on the show. I'm going to do a full PFD. How am I going to get it? I don't know. I'm going to grow the economy. Or are you going to tax people $2 billion? No. Are you going to cut spending by $2 billion? Probably not. Well, then you're not going to get it. So don't tell people that, you know, sorry.
Right. Right. Well, again, how do we pay for it? That's always my question. Then, if you know, how are we going to pay for it if we're not going to have it happen? And I think we're rapidly reaching this point. Over the last 15 years, we've had the ability to rob Peter to pay Paul, you know, to play the shell game with monies and to do things, to move it out of the SBR or the CBR, to take the dividend. But we're rapidly reaching the point to where there is no more, as I said earlier, there's no more road to kick the can down. There's just no more. You've got less than $3 billion in the CBR, which has to have about $1 billion in it remaining to cash flow for the state. The SBR is empty. The PFD has $600 million left that they could acquire if they wanted to take it all. And yet we're already seeing the numbers showing that it's going to be $1 billion plus upside down. So, you know, we're rapidly reaching that point where you just can't shovel the money around and shuffle it around anymore. When do we hear politicians talk about that?
Well, I mean, look, two things can be true at the same time, right? So there's plenty of areas of state government where you can make efficiencies and you can make cuts, right? Plenty of things. I have lots of bills that I have. My favorite bill, I tell folks, I cut a program that no one was on, that the state was paying for years, right? Like, literally had a social program called catastrophic acute medical assistance. Nobody was on it. Still paid it, still funded for it, still sent people denial letters even though nobody got it, right? So you go through, you cut stuff like that. And you tell government can always be more efficient, right? Like, I said the most exciting thing about what I do in the legislature is I know that this is one of the most efficient operations I've ever been a part of, and there is nothing but improvements that you can make all the time, okay? So there's always those types of things, right? But at the end of the day, like, you got to be realistic about the expectations here. So, like, you open the show, you talked about an article, right, about Medicaid, the health budget, right, 40% of our budget. That's not true, right? Like, that's the entire health budget. It's $1 billion in GF, or excuse me, it's $700 million on Medicaid and GF. Total budget's $4 billion. Most of that's federal match. All right. So, like, you can get rid of that $700 million in state funding. If you killed the entire Medicaid program, you get $700 million, right? But you know what that is not? That is not $2 billion, right? If I eliminated the entire Medicaid program, right? I mean, It's not $2 billion. So just tell people, like, what the numbers are, and then say, hey, these are my ideas, and this is how much money. Right?
Will Stapp, our guest. We're out of time. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Will, thanks so much. Hold the line for just a second here. Folks, we got more coming up tomorrow with Firearms Friday. Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine will be joining us. Willie Waffle and more. If you got to go, be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. All right, Will, I want to give you one final bite at the apple here because, I mean, I think you're laying down some hard truths, and it's one of the problems that I've had with many politicians who've said, you know, I want to full this, I want to full that, but no taxes. And
Yeah,
we'll try.
maybe not get it. Sorry.
We'll try and cut, but we don't. Again,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Michael, like I have no problem coming on, telling people what I think about things, getting beat up when I say things that people don't like, right? I am totally okay with that, right? When I first ran for office, right, people said, well, I want this. And I said, well, too bad, like, sorry. And you know what? I mean, like, look, that's part of life. Like, I fully understand that, like, we started the show, people are going to be mad at me in the chat room over how I vote on education. I get it. But you know what I did? I told everybody how I was going to vote ahead of time. I wrote an op-ed about it. I did the same thing last year. And I was always consistent in my vote and positions, right?
Right.
And that's always what you're going to get from me, And, like, my issue is with people who like go out and say things that they know are not true. Like, obviously there's always some ignorance, like when you're running for office and stuff like that. But some of the people, man, they know better. And if you know better, tell people the truth. Like I said, I have a different philosophy than say Brad Keithley or my friend Senator Rob Myers, right? But they're very honest about how you get to the outcome they want. Right. I mean, it's not rocket science here. Don't go tell people, I mean, the analogy, I'll be a little crude here, but like, don't piss in my Cheerios and tell me it's milk,
Right. Exactly. No. And I like that. The fact that at least it's no holds barred. We tell you where we're going and what we need to do, because the bottom line is there is no more room on the road. And we've got to be honest with ourselves. And if we don't start to acknowledge that, we're going to be facing even deeper problems because we can't print money. We're not like the Fed. We can't just, quantitative ease another extra $1 billion in there out of nowhere. It's got to happen. All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for coming in and connecting all those dots, as David said. I think that's it's a great point. Look forward to talking to you again, my friend. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, that's it for me today. We will see you guys tomorrow. It's, and he's not wrong. Look, he's not wrong. You can't keep coming on. And this has been one of my heartaches with pretty much every candidate that's come on so far for governor. They've all talked about a full PFD. How do you pay for it? No good answers yet. I'm trying to get some good answers. No good answers yet. We've got to figure it out. Oh, and Donald, by the way, Donald says, and don't tax people just so they can get. The PFD is already paid for, Donald. The PFD is already paid for by the earnings. What we should do is get our PFD, and then if they want to tax us for these other things, that will give us a voice in whether or not we want it. All right. That's it. We got to go. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.